A tēnā rā koutou katoa e whakarongo maina ki tēnei o ngā kōrero e pāna ki tēnei kaupapa. He kaupapa nui tēnei ki e karema, he kaupapa tēnei e pāna ki ngā kareme e kia nei, ko Y30. Kei roto i te whare i tēnei wā, ko te kai kōrero nei, a Rahui, no reira tēnei te mihi nui ki a koe. Nau mai whakatau mai Rahui.
Kia ora e te tuakana, me koutou e whakarongo maina, ko i nei te mihi mana hau kia koutou katoa.
Tēnā koe. Y30 e hoa. This is something that I've heard about and not really too clued up about. So, he tino pātai tēnei hiaha ngā hitori o tēnei kreme. Like, please fill us in on the journey so far.
So in the kaumātua's time, they talked about the tongikura of Tāwhiao, ko mate te motu i te huari whakawai. And that meant the sword of the Pākehā sweeping through into the Raupatu in the 1860s. And that culminated in the confiscations of lands, 1.2 million acres, that also encompassed the psychological damage that it did to our people. And so from the most devastating point of our history came actually the fight for redress. So that actually gave us some strength to fight back and to get back to the golden years of Tainui, as it were. And so from Tāwhiao's time, he went to England. In Mahuta's time, he went to the Parliament to try and get redress. In Te Rata's time, he also went to England and had an audience with the King and Queen of England at that time. And then through the Te Puea era of seeking redress, and through Te Rata and Te Puea was to convince Pō Marae and Ngata to stage a royal commission here, te roera komihana, that was actually came about in the 1930s. And that Sim Commission, because Sim was the judge at the time, he said to the people, the confiscations of Waikato and Taranaki were excessive and they were harsh. And they should be given back some land and they should be compensated for the takings. That led to some of the negotiations, and the negotiations were led by Tūmate Mahuta, the brother of King Te Rata, by Pei Te Hurinui, and by Kahupake from South Auckland. And together they put together the case for negotiations with the government of the time. That led to the end of the Second World War, but the World War, and so in the late 1930s, the World War happened, and so everything was put on hold. And in 1946 was the first settlement. The Waikato-Maniapoto Settlements Act came into force, and that allowed for the establishment of the Tainui Māori Trust Board with compensation on a yearly basis. I think it was £10,000 for the first payment, and then £6,000 every year in perpetuity. Well, what they hadn't factored for was £6,000 in 1946 meant something totally different in 1964, for example, before the money transferred into dollars. And so what Waikato felt was that they were being disadvantaged by that archaic law of the 1940s. And so negotiations started again. Really, and they started in earnest in the 1980s. In the 1980s, the Crown at the time wanted to sell off SOEs, or state-owned enterprises, in particular Coal Corp. And so Waikato and the Tainui Māori Trust Board really said to the government, you can't do this because we are negotiating and you will jeopardise our power of negotiation if you're going to sell off all of these pieces of whenua. Coupled with that, in the 1980s, Matt Rutter, as the Minister for Māori Affairs, came up with the idea of the establishment of the Waitangi Tribunal. And it was Uncle Koro Wetere, as the Minister for Māori Affairs, that extended it back to 1840. So in Matt's time, you could only go back to 75, and Uncle Koro's time, you could go all the way back to 1840. That led to an influx of claims, and the Tainui Māori Trust Board, Ngā Marae Tōpū, and Te Kotahi Mahuta, and led by Te Kotahi, lodged the claim in 1987, and they were given the Y number. So Y is the Treaty of Waitangi number, and then they had number 30, so it was the 30th one in line. Then there was the idea of the fisheries settlement that happened in 1992. That led to a number of, in-house fighting between Māori going off to the Privy Council and things like that, but it was finally settled in 1992. The negotiations for Waikato were still continuing throughout that time, and that culminated in 1995 with the Waikato-Raupatu Settlements Act, and that the AIP was signed by the hand of Te Arikinui, and that was witnessed by Kingi Tuheitia, alongside Jim Bolger as the Prime Minister and Doug Graham as the Minister of Justice at that time. So the Y30 claim in 1987 encompassed quite a few things. In 1995, they said, well, we only know how to deal with whenua. We don't know how to deal with the river, and we don't know how to deal with harbours. And so Te Kotahi said, well, we'll leave those to be discussed at a later time. Let's focus on this one, and we'll come back to those. Those can be the outstanding claims. And so throughout that time, coming forward into 2008, an AIP for the river was signed by our negotiators, Lady Reiha Mahuta and Tuku Morgan, alongside Parekura Horomia and various ministers, and Michael Cullen of that time. That unfortunately, in 2008, Labour were gone, National come in, and so there were further discussions there, and National wanted to have another discussion about it. So it wasn't actually put into an act until 2010, when the Waikato-Raupatu River Act came into force. So that meant the whenua, that meant the river was sorted, as it were. And that meant that the last piece of the outstanding claims was the harbours, and so and that's where we are today.
Wow, that's fascinating. Just really getting that history and realising now that we've been negotiating for years and years, since way back in the day, and just really acknowledge Matutaera and Koro Wetere, for really instigating that Waitangi Tribunal, and also having a go retrospect as well. It's amazing. And what I didn't realise is that the Y30 claim was a claim for pretty much everything, but that we had only just decided we're just going to focus on the whenua first. And now it's like, well, there's all these outstanding claims. And so enlighten us as to what are the outstanding claims, and what areas are those for?
So particularly out of the 1995, the remaining, the outstanding claims are the Kawhia Harbour, the Aotea Harbour, the Whangaroa Harbour and the Manukau Harbour. There's also some land blocks like East Wairua and Maioro that were put aside. But in the influx of recent history, like over the last 10 or so years, there's been so the government of the day decided to cut. You had a particular time, and they would cut the lodging of new claims. And so a whole host of claims. And so various whānau, various individuals, various hapu, various marae, all lodged claims. And they're all part and parcel of the areas in which we're discussing. And so we're talking about now, how can we use the Y30 as a doorway to allow whānau to get through now, rather than have to wait in the wings to get mandate at a later time, because it could take a number of 20 to 30 years, and if whānau really want to get some stuff done now, then the doorway is open through Y30. And so there's West Coast considerations, there's Tāmaki considerations, there's the eastern areas around Maramarua, around Whangamarino, around and then the eastern side Te Hoi o Tainui, and that's where all of those areas encompass some of the things that we're talking about today. And today we have Oati partnerships. So some of the groups have decided that they want to align to Y30 to get through in a more faster and expedient way. And so we've signed Oati arrangements to be able to reflect a win-win situation, not only for Waikato-Tainui, but for those other claimants as well. And we're in discussion with a whole host of the claimants, whether they're individual. So some of the individuals have put up various claims. Some of the marae have put up claims, some of them whaanau claims about particular urupa or particular tracts of land or particular tupuna that were disadvantaged because of the breaches to Te Tiriti o Waitangi. And then we have some of the hapu claims as well that are looking at particular areas. So it's wide and varied, but the scope goes from the south of Taharua right up the west coast to the northern part, the northern part of the Manukau Harbour, through Tāmaki Makaurau, and then down the western side of the Raupatu boundary from Pukorokoro at Miranda, and then coming back down again. So there are a number of outstanding claims.
Kia ora. And I suppose one question that's coming up for me is the partnership. Like, what are the benefits of some of these, whānau and hapu partnering with the tribe?
So in my view, the benefit is they get through the door now, because Y30 has a mandate that is not just focused on the outstanding claims. It has a mandate to encompass those claims should they want to align. And really the mana whakatau is with the claimant, and it's with the marae, and it's with the hapu, and it's with the whānau. And they need to consider whether they want to or not, and we respect that mana whakatau. But the idea is that there is a waka leaving the dock right now, and should people want to be on that waka and to get some stuff done in a more expedient way than waiting for the next waka that might not even come to the dock for the next 20 years. So there are some considerations, and I totally respect that each of the claimants, each of the whānau, hapu, have their own mana, and they must decide on the best course to uphold their own mana.
Yes, no, the great explanation and the analogy there of, the waka's leaving now. What I also got in that was that on that waka are a whole lot of skilled sailors. And I'm thinking, if we were to wait for another waka to come along, or even having to build our own waka, it's like, well, who's got the skills to build it? Who's got the skills to actually navigate that? It's like, man, it sort of makes a lot of sense for me to, hey, let's all get on here together and, kia anga whakamua i te waka, and really utilising those resources and skilled personnel that are on there.
Yeah, and that's a fair point too. So we've been at this for nigh on 80 years. Since 1946 and through, and probably have an awesome team that will be able to navigate this. Look, that doesn't mean that other people don't have the capacity, that doesn't mean that other people don't have the skills, but it means that there is a group that are highly skilled, there is a group that is very efficient to be able to get some stuff done sooner rather than later, and that's an option. It's simply only an option for our whānau to consider.
Tēnā koe, and kaya rātou te mana, the choice is definitely up to each whānau and hapu. And so in light of that, I understand there are some wānanga, opportunities for people to come together to actually have these conversations.
Very much so. So over the next 4 weeks, we're going to be staging at least 5 wānanga, and we're going to be staging them particularly in the harbour areas, but we're also going to have one at Hopu Hopu, and that's really to ask our people 3 years ago, we went out and we said to them, what are your aspirations? What, you know, when we settle this claim, what do you want to see at the other end? And a lot of people said, we want a more devolved model. We don't want a centralised model. We want more of a devolved model that mā te moana o kawhia, te moana o kawhia hei kōrero. Mā te moana o Aotea, te moana o Aotea hei kōrero. And so a more of a devolved model. That was one of the key and clear ones. But there was also restoration of different fish types or kai moana that was there, but it's not there anymore. The protection of the Maui dolphin, for example, when we started this, there was more than 1,000. Now we're down to 75 left in the whole species. So some of those considerations. What are the economic opportunities for our whānau? What is going to be our response to climate change? Because that's going to be huge. I mean, it's a waste of time building a forest on land that's going to be underwater in 15 years. And so we have to have those crystal balls alongside councils, alongside research institutes, but we need to rely as well on our own mātauranga Māori. So over the next wānangas, the next 5 wānanga, we want to come back to the whānau and say, look, this is what you said 3 years ago. Is it still relevant? Are there some things that you've thought of in that time that you need to put into the mix? How do we approach mana motuhake? How do we approach mana moana? How do we approach mana whakahaere that makes it easier for our whānau to be able to have the mana motu hake say? And so some things that we're looking at, and we're looking across the motu, might be a legal personality like the Whanganui River or the Urewera National Park. There are some clear examples possibly in Canada and the United States that have already started talking about estuaries and how to protect those and in a claims context. There are some stuff happening over in Europe, in Japan, in China, for example, that we might be able to utilise. So a lot of this stuff is our own mātauranga, but how does it fit in with our own mātauranga, and how does it fit in with our own mana motuhake way? And how can we devise a settlement that allows opportunities not only for growth in this generation, but growth in subsequent generations in our tamariki and our mokopuna, so they might come home to some houses and infrastructure. But when they come home to their houses, there's some jobs. And those jobs will allow them to stay in the community. That will build kohanga reo. That will build our own curriculum in the education space. That might build some wānanga out on the coast so that they can do their tertiary education throughout the context of tribal affiliations to harbours. These are just some of the things that have been voiced. These are just some of the things that are being discussed, and we want to really discuss with the whānau what is the width and what is the breadth of the aspirations, so that we can put it on the table and fight as hard as we can to achieve them.
Oh, excellent. And what I'm really getting is the possibility of mana motuhake for our people. And this is such a beautiful conversation. Rahui, I have the dates here for the whānau. Aotea Wananga is on Sunday the 14th of March from 10 to 2 at Te Papatapu Marae. Whaingaroa Wananga is on Sunday the 21st of March from 10 to 2 at Poihākena Marae. And there's also a Wananga at Te Whakakitinga o Waikato Chambers at Hopu Hopu Wednesday evening the 24th of March from 6 to 8 p.m. And one up in Manukau, okay? The Manukau Wananga is on Friday the 26th of March from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at Te Puea Marae. And you can also listen out on Tainui Live. We will be promoting those hui as well. Hua no, hei whakakapi, he kōrera noa au e pānaki ki tēnei kaupapa. Anything more to say about Y30?
Just to reiterate that this is actually our last time at the radio. So this is going to be a fulsome catch-up. Look, it won't be the last time that we have to have considerations about claim aspects. This is about the historical claims of Waikato-Tainui and Y30. We haven't even, we've just started to put our toe in the water for Article 3 issues like health, like education, like social circumstances that our whānau see themselves in. And that's where the oranga tamariki space is. That's where the homelessness space is. That's where feeding our people space is. That's about building communities and regenerating communities mō te oranga tonutanga o te iwi, mō te oranga tonutanga o te tangata. Nō reira, ko te tangata te whāinga matua o tēnei kreme o ngā kreme o haere ake nei. Nō reira, kei konei ke ko te Y30, te wāhanga whakamutunga o ngā kreme a Waikato-Tainui i o tātou hitori, i ngā tū āhuatanga o te hitori tuku iho, heo no ko te kaupapa ko te rā kitua.
Rahui, tēnā koe mo enei whakamāramatanga, tēnā raho ki koe.
Kia ora mai.